A single mother who sold flowers on the street married the candy apple seller, never imagining he was a billionaire in disguise. And her life was never the same again. There are moments in life when everything falls apart at once. For Benjamin Hayes, that moment arrived on a rainy Tuesday in October when he found his fiancée, Victoria, kissing his best friend in his own company's office. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. The worst part was discovering, through a flash drive she left in her computer, that Victoria had planned the wedding just to get access to half of his $3 billion fortune. Benjamin Hayes, the man who built a tech empire from nothing, the billionaire who appeared on the cover of Forbes, the businessman everyone admired, was now a foolish man in love, who had almost handed over half of everything to a woman who only loved his money. That same night, Benjamin made the most reckless decision of his life. He called his lawyer, canceled the wedding, put the company in the hands of his trusted partner, and simply disappeared. No warnings, no explanations, no trace. 3 weeks later, Benjamin Hayes no longer existed, at least not in Seattle. Now he was just Ben, an ordinary guy in worn-out jeans and a simple shirt, pushing a wooden cart through the streets of Austin, Texas, selling candy apples. "Candy apples, fresh and crisp," he shouted on the corner of 6th Avenue, trying to imitate the enthusiasm of the street vendors he had seen in movies. People walked past him without looking. Some laughed. Others turned their faces away with disdain. Benjamin quickly learned that being invisible was freeing and at the same time painful. For the first time in his life, no one wanted anything from him. No one asked for favors. No one pretended to smile. And no one, absolutely no one, was interested in his precious apples. "You're doing it wrong," said a child's voice behind him. Benjamin turned and saw a girl of about 8, with curly hair tied in 2 braids, bright brown eyes, and a Spider-Man backpack. She watched him with the honesty only children have. "Excuse me?" Benjamin blinked, confused. "You're shouting too much. You sound desperate. Nobody buys from desperate people. My mom always says a good seller makes the customer feel like they're doing him a favor, not the other way around." Benjamin opened his mouth but couldn't answer. An 8-year-old had just given a sales lesson to a billionaire. He didn't know whether to laugh or feel offended. "And how old are you?" "8, he asked, crossing his arms. 8.5. She corrected him seriously. "And I've helped my mom sell more flowers than you've sold apples in your whole life." Benjamin let out a genuine laugh. It had been weeks since he had laughed like that. "All right, sales expert. What's your name?" "Sophie." "And yours?" "Ben." "Ben what?" "Just Ben." Sophie frowned, suspicious. "Everyone has a last name." "Mine got lost along the way," Benjamin said, shrugging. The girl rolled her eyes but smiled. Then, without asking, she took a candy apple from the cart and took a huge bite. "Hey, you have to pay for that," Benjamin protested. "I'm testing the product. If it's good, I'll bring my mom here. If it's bad, you'll have to pay me for the emotional trauma of eating a horrible apple." Benjamin had no words. This girl was impossible and hilarious. Sophie chewed slowly, thoughtful, as if tasting fine wine. After a few long seconds, she nodded approvingly. 7.5 out of 10. "The coating is good, but you put too many peanuts. Some people are allergic, you know." "Thanks for the review, Junior Gordon Ramsay," Benjamin said sarcastically. "You're welcome. Now give me another one without peanuts." "Sophie!" A woman's voice echoed down the street. Benjamin looked up. A woman ran toward them, her brown hair flying, her face flushed with worry. She wore a flowered apron over a white blouse and jeans, carrying a basket full of flowers. Even from a distance, Benjamin could tell she was upset. "Sophie Marie Carter, I told you to wait for me at the flower shop." The woman stopped in front of them, out of breath, and pulled her daughter by the arm. "How many times do I have to tell you that you can't go around talking to strangers?" "But Mom, he's not a stranger. He's Ben, the apple seller who doesn't know how to sell." Benjamin stifled a laugh. Sophie's mother, however, didn't find it funny. She turned to him with a cold look that made Benjamin feel as if he were being judged by an invisible court. "I'm sorry if my daughter bothered you," she said, far too formally. "It didn't bother me. Actually, she gave me some good tips about sales," Benjamin said, trying to sound friendly. The woman narrowed her eyes, clearly suspicious. She looked at the apple cart, then at Benjamin, as if trying to decide whether he was a threat or just an incompetent vendor. "Sophie, let's go now." "But Mom, I haven't finished my apple yet. You didn't even pay for it." "I was testing it," Sophie argued, completely offended. Her mother sighed, tired, and reached into her pocket. She pulled out 5 crumpled dollars and pushed them into Benjamin's hand with more force than necessary. "Here, for the apple, and sorry for any inconvenience." Benjamin held the money, but before he could say anything, the woman was already pulling Sophie by the arm, dragging her away. "Bye, Ben," Sophie waved, smiling with her mouth full of caramel. Benjamin waved back, still holding the $5. He looked at the bill, then at the direction they had disappeared, and felt something strange in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. Who was that suspicious-eyed woman and her impossible daughter? And why, for the first time in weeks, was Benjamin Hayes smiling for real? He put the $5 in his pocket as if they were a treasure and went back to pushing his cart. But now, somehow, the apples felt lighter, and the loneliness a little less heavy. The next morning, Benjamin woke up in the tiny apartment he rented for $600 a month and looked around with a mix of disbelief and quiet satisfaction. The place was the size of the closet in his old mansion in Seattle. The fridge made a noise like a bear growling. The shower had only 2 temperatures, freezing or boiling, but it was his, or rather, Ben's, the apple vendor. He prepared the cart with extra care that morning. Fewer peanuts on the apples, following Sophie's advice, the caramel a little thicker, and for the first time he caught himself hoping to see that impossible girl with the braids again. At 10 o'clock, Benjamin was already at his usual spot on 6th Avenue, shouting his slogan with a little Weniger desperation and a little more confidence. Candy apples made with love and without too many peanuts. 2 older ladies stopped and bought 3 apples. A tourist couple took a picture with the cart. Benjamin sold more in 2 hours than he had the entire week before. Maybe that girl really did know what she was talking about. "See? I told you you were doing it wrong." Benjamin turned around. There was Sophie with the same Spider-Man backpack, but this time wearing a red hoodie with bunny ears on the hood. She had a lollipop in her mouth and a victorious smile on her face. "You again?" Benjamin pretended to be surprised. "Don't tell me you came to test more products for free." "Today I brought money." Sophie showed him a wrinkled $1 bill. "But only if the apple has no peanuts." "No peanuts, just like the most demanding food critic in Austin requested." Sophie let out a sharp laugh and grabbed the apple Benjamin had prepared, especially without peanuts. She took a bite and her eyes widened. 9 out of 10. Now we're talking. "Only 9? What do I need to make it 10? "Edible glitter," Sophie said, completely serious. "Everything is better with glitter." Benjamin laughed out loud. This girl was unreal. "And your mom? Does she know you're here again talking to the strange apple vendor?" "She's at the flower shop. Super busy. Today is Thursday, big delivery day. She lets me play in the square while she works, but I have to stay close." Sophie took another huge bite of the apple. "And you're not strange?" "Strange is the hot dog guy over there who talks to himself." Benjamin looked in the direction she pointed, and sure enough, there was a hot dog vendor mumbling to himself while setting up his cart. "Fair enough. My mom still thinks you're suspicious, you know," Sophie said with her mouth full. "Suspicious? Me?" "Yeah. She says, any man selling apples on the street who doesn't say his last name must be running from something like a crazy ex-wife or loan sharks." Benjamin choked on his own coffee. Your mother said that? She always says things like that. My mom is super protective. She doesn't trust anyone. One time a really handsome guy tried to ask her out, and she said he must be a scammer because no one that handsome stays single for no reason. Benjamin didn't know whether to laugh or worry about Sophie's mother's level of suspicion. And what happened with the handsome guy? Oh, he was married. Sophie shrugged. My mom has a radar for fake people. It never fails. A chill ran down Benjamin's spine. If Sophie's mom had a radar for lies, he was in real trouble. Sophie! The same firm voice from the day before echoed across the square. Benjamin turned and saw Sophie's mother walking toward them, this time without the flower basket but with the same disapproving expression on her face. She wore a simple white t-shirt, jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was tied in a messy ponytail. Even with the simple clothes, she had a natural beauty that made Benjamin forget how to breathe for 2 seconds. Good morning, Benjamin said, trying to sound polite. She completely ignored the greeting and looked straight at Sophie. You promised to stay at the square. This is not the square. Technically, I'm 50 meters from the square. That still counts as close. Sophie Marie Carter, do not start. Sophie rolled her eyes dramatically but obeyed. Sophie's mother then turned to Benjamin, and he could see her eyes up close, brown with small golden specks, full of tiredness and caution. Look, I don't want to be rude, but could you stop giving free food to my daughter? She has already learned that she can get what she wants with charm. I'm trying to teach her responsibility. She paid today. Benjamin pointed to the crumpled dollar on the cart. $1. Honest transaction. The woman looked at the bill, then at Sophie, who waved innocently with the half-eaten apple. Still, Sophie, you cannot bother people while they're working. I wasn't bothering. I was giving sales consulting. Benjamin let out a laugh, but Sophie's mother was not amused. Sorry again, she said, this time more tired than irritated. Sophie, let's go now. Wait, Sophie turned to Benjamin. What is your real last name? Sophie. Her mother widened her eyes, mortified. Benjamin hesitated. For a second he thought about telling the truth, but then he looked at that tired, cautious woman who worked hard and protected her daughter fiercely. If she found out who he really was, everything would change. She would see him the way everyone always did a walking bank account. Miller. Benjamin lied. Ben Miller. Sophie's mother studied him for a few seconds, as if trying to detect the lie. Then she nodded briefly. Nice to meet you, Ben Miller. I'm Rachel. Rachel Carter. Rachel. Finally, a name for the face. Nice to meet you, Rachel. Now that the formal introductions are done, can you please stop charming my daughter with sugared apples? She is already hyperactive enough without outside help. Benjamin smiled. I'll try, but your daughter is very persuasive. I know. Believe me, I know. Rachel took Sophie's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We have deliveries to make. Sophie waved excitedly to Benjamin as she left with her mother. Bye, Ben. Next week I'll bring my grandmother to meet you. She will love you. Benjamin waved back, smiling. Rachel, however, turned one last time, and her eyes met Benjamin's with unexpected intensity. Ben Miller, she said, testing the name. If that really is your name. Then she turned and left, leaving Benjamin with a tightness in his chest and the absolute certainty that Rachel Carter would be much harder to fool than he had imagined. He looked at Sophie's crumpled dollar still on the cart, and thought that maybe, just maybe, living as Ben Miller was the best and worst decision he had ever made. A week passed, and Benjamin could not get Rachel Carter out of his mind. Not only because she was beautiful, which was an undeniable fact, but because she looked at him as if she could see through any mask he wore, and that was both frightening and fascinating. He had learned her routine. Every morning Rachel opened the flower shop at 8. Sophie went to school at 7:30. But on Thursdays and Fridays, when there were no afternoon classes, the girls stayed playing in the square while Rachel worked. And always, without fail, Sophie found an excuse to visit the apple cart. That Friday, Sophie appeared wearing a yellow dress with white polka dots and a headband with bee antennas. "Today is costume day at school," she explained, grabbing an apple without even asking. Benjamin had already set one aside just for her. "I'm a queen bee. But the teacher said queen bees don't wear pink sneakers, so technically I'm a rebel queen bee." Benjamin smiled as he accepted the crumpled dollar Sophie always brought. "Rebel queen bee? I like it. Much more interesting than a regular queen bee." "Exactly." Sophie took a bite of the apple and spoke with her mouth full. "You should make apples shaped like bees. You would sell a ton." "Sophie, I barely know how to make round apples properly. I think bees are out of my reach." "Excuse." Sophie pointed the apple at him like a magic wand. "My mom always says that whoever doesn't take risks won't get rewards. Your mom seems to have a lot of sayings." "Oh, you have no idea. She has one for every situation. Last week I forgot my homework and she said, 'Sophie, laziness is misery's cousin.' I don't even know what that means, but it sounded very serious." Benjamin laughed, shaking his head. "And speaking of your mom, where is she today?" "Helping a difficult customer who wants peach-colored flowers, but doesn't like real peaches, only the color. But it can't be too orange because orange reminds her of Halloween, and she hates Halloween." Sophie rolled her eyes dramatically. "Complicated people give me a headache. Welcome to the business world. That's why I'm going to be an astronaut. No difficult customers in space." Benjamin was about to respond when he heard a cheerful, deep voice behind him. "So, you're the famous apple salesman who enchanted my granddaughter." Benjamin turned and saw a woman around 70, with short gray hair, red-framed glasses, and a wide smile that took up half her face. She wore jeans, a floral blouse, and comfortable white sneakers. Next to her was Rachel, arms crossed, wearing that expression Benjamin already knew well, pure suspicion. "Grandma Helen." Sophie ran to hug her grandmother, almost dropping the apple. "Hi, my little coconut candy." Helen hugged her tight, then looked at Benjamin with obvious curiosity. "So, young man, you're Ben Miller." "Yes, ma'am. Nice to meet you." Benjamin held out his hand, and Helen shook it with surprising strength. "Helen Carter. And don't call me ma'am, please. Makes me feel older than I am. You can call me Helen or Grandma Helen if you prefer. Everyone does." "Mom, don't exaggerate," Rachel muttered, clearly embarrassed. "Exaggerate? Me? Never." Helen picked up an apple from the cart and examined it as if it were a rare jewel. "Sophie doesn't stop talking about you. Grandma, Ben makes the best apples in the world. Grandma, Ben is funny. Grandma, Ben doesn't have a real last name." Benjamin choked. "Mom." Rachel's eyes widened in horror. "What?" "She really said that?" Helen shrugged innocently. "Children don't lie, dear. They only repeat what they hear adults say." Rachel turned red. "I didn't say that in front of her. Walls have ears, and Sophie hears like a bat." Helen took a bite of the apple, and her eyes sparkled. "Wow, this is delicious. Rachel, you need to try this." "I don't want to try it." "Mom, don't be difficult. Try it." "No." "Rachel Ann Carter, you're being rude to the young man." "I'm not being rude. I just don't want caramel apples at 9 in the morning. Technically, it's 9:15, Sophie corrected. Benjamin watched the scene, trying not to laugh. The 3 generations of Carter women were equally stubborn and funny. Helen pulled a $5 bill from her purse and handed it to Benjamin. "Give me 3 apples, one for me, one for Sophie, and one for my grumpy daughter." "I'm not grumpy," Rachel protested. "Yes, you are. You haven't smiled since 2020, Sophie said, seriously. "Sophie, it's true. The last time I saw you laugh for real was when that dog stole the bride's bouquet at the church." Helen burst into loud laughter. "Oh, I remember that. The dog ran off with the flowers in his mouth and the bride chasing him in that huge dress. It looked like a movie scene. Rachel covered her face with her hands, mortified. Benjamin separated 3 apples and handed them to Helen, who gave one to Sophie and tried to push the other into Rachel's hand. "Mom, I don't want it." "Take it, dear. Otherwise the young man will think you don't like him." "I don't need to like him. He's an apple salesman my daughter insists on visiting every day." "And what's the problem?" "He seems like a good person. You met him 2 minutes ago." Mother's instinct never fails. Helen winked at Benjamin. "She's always like this, suspicious. Her last boyfriend was 4 years ago, and she broke up with him because she thought he blinked too much." "Mom!" Rachel turned as red as a pepper. "I broke up with him because he was immature. He was 26, Rachel. Every 26-year-old man is immature." Benjamin finally couldn't hold it and laughed. Rachel looked at him with a mix of anger and embarrassment. "I'm sorry," Benjamin said, trying to compose himself. "I didn't mean to laugh." "Laugh all you want," Helen said cheerfully. "This family is a circus. The sooner you accept it, the better." "Mom, he's not accepting anything because he's not part of the family." Rachel grabbed the apple from Helen's hand. "There, I have the apple. Happy?" "Very. Now take a bite." "I'm not going to bite it." "Bite it." "No." "Rachel Ann Carter, you're making a scene in front of half the town." Rachel looked around and noticed that some people were actually watching. She sighed, defeated, and took a small bite of the apple. Her eyes widened. "Wow," she murmured, surprised. "This is really good." Benjamin smiled victoriously. "Thank you." Rachel blinked as if she had just realized she had given him a compliment and quickly put her serious expression back on. "I still think you're suspicious." "I know," Benjamin said. And this time, he was the one who truly smiled. Helen watched the two of them with a curious sparkle in her eyes, while Sophie ate her apple, her little bee antennas bouncing as she smiled like she knew exactly what was going on. And maybe she did. In the days that followed, something changed. Rachel still looked at Benjamin with suspicion, but now she stopped to talk, not much, just enough to be polite. Or at least that's what she told herself. The next Tuesday, Rachel showed up at the apple cart carrying a cardboard box full of wilted flowers. "Good morning," she said without much emotion. "Good morning," Benjamin replied, surprised. It was the first time Rachel had come to him on her own. "Sophie forgot her backpack here yesterday and came looking for it, but she hasn't come back yet. Have you seen her around?" "No, she hasn't shown up here today." Rachel sighed, tired, and set the box on the ground. "Great. Now I'll have to search the whole square. Do you want me to keep an eye out? If she shows up, I'll tell her to wait here." Rachel stared at him, assessing. "You would do that?" "Of course. It's not like I have much to do besides selling apples to 3 people a day." Rachel almost smiled. "Almost. All right. If she shows up, tell her to go straight back to the shop and don't give her free apples. She's had too much sugar this week." "Understood. No sugary bribes." Rachel rolled her eyes, but this time Benjamin was sure he saw the corner of her mouth lift slightly before she turned and hurried off. 15 minutes later, Sophie came running, her backpack hanging sideways and her hair messy. "Hi, Ben. Where's my mom? She went looking for you." She was worried. "Oh no." Sophie made a face. "She's going to give me another lecture about responsibility again. Last time it lasted 40 minutes. 40? I counted." Benjamin held back a laugh. "Maybe if you didn't forget things, she wouldn't have to lecture you. You sound like my teacher." Sophie crossed her arms, annoyed. "And she sounds like my mom. Everyone sounds like someone who wants to lecture me. Welcome to life." Sophie let out a dramatic sigh and sat on the curb next to the cart. "You know what's boring? Everyone is worried about me all the time. My mom, my grandma, my teacher. It's like I'm going to explode if I'm alone for 5 minutes." Benjamin sat beside her, adjusting the straw hat he had bought to look more authentic as a vendor. "It's because they love you. People who love always worry. That's exhausting." Sophie picked up a stick from the ground and started drawing circles in the dirt. My mom doesn't even date anymore because of me. She thinks every man who shows up is dangerous or after something. Benjamin felt his chest tighten. Maybe she's just being careful. Careful is one thing. Paranoid is another. Sophie looked at him with those brown eyes that were too sharp for her age. Are you afraid of getting hurt, Ben? The question caught Benjamin completely off guard. Why do you ask that? Because you don't talk about family either, or friends, or where you came from. It's like you just appeared out of nowhere. Sophie tilted her head. My science teacher said nothing comes from nowhere. Everything has an origin. So what's yours? Benjamin stayed silent. This 8-year-old girl was asking questions he'd been avoiding, even with himself, for weeks. It's complicated, he finally said. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain. Maybe because it's true. Sophie studied him for a few seconds, then shrugged. All right, I won't push. But just so you know, secrets always show up. My mom found out I failed my math test, even though I hid the paper at the bottom of my backpack. Moms have superpowers. Benjamin laughed. Noted. At that moment Rachel came running, her face red with worry. Sophie, I told you to wait for me. Sorry, I forgot my backpack and came back to get it, but you had already left, so I came straight here because I knew you'd be looking. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to calm down. You're going to scare me to death one of these days. No, I'm not. You're strong like a superhero. Grandma Helen always says so. Rachel ran a hand over her face, exhausted, and looked at Benjamin. Thank you for staying with her. It was nothing. We were just talking about secrets, Sophie said innocently. Rachel frowned. What secrets? My secrets? Benjamin lied quickly. Sophie wanted to know the apple recipe. I told her it was a family secret. Sophie looked at him confused, but Benjamin made a quick face, and she understood the message. Oh, right. The secret recipe, Sophie said excitedly. Ben said that if I tell anyone, the apple loses its magic. Rachel didn't look convinced, but she was too tired to investigate. All right, let's go. We need to finish the flower arrangements for Saturday's wedding. Already? But I didn't even eat my apple yet. You ate 3 this week. That's enough. But Mom? Sophie, don't insist. Sophie pouted but obeyed. Before leaving, she turned to Benjamin and whispered, Thanks for not telling. Benjamin winked at her. Rachel watched their exchange with suspicion but said nothing. She took Sophie's hand and started walking back to the flower shop. Benjamin watched the two of them walk away, feeling that tightness in his chest that was becoming more and more familiar. He liked those two. He liked the impossible girl and the cautious mother. He liked the feeling of being just Ben, the apple seller, and not Benjamin Hayes, the lonely billionaire. But how long would that last? He was about to return to the cart when he heard the sound of a familiar engine. His heart froze. A black SUV stopped at the corner. The window rolled down, and there was Derek, his personal assistant from Seattle, wearing a suit and dark glasses. Mr. Hayes, we need to talk. Benjamin looked around quickly. Rachel and Sophie had already turned the corner. He walked to the car, angry. What are you doing here? Your partner is getting nervous. You've been gone for weeks. There are meetings you need to attend, contracts to sign. You can't just disappear. I can do whatever I want. The press is starting to ask questions, and Victoria is giving interviews saying you left her at the altar. Benjamin clenched his fists. I didn't leave anyone. I found out she was a liar. I know that, but the public doesn't. Derek took off his glasses. You need to come back and control the narrative before she destroys your reputation. Benjamin looked at the apple cart, at the quiet square, at the flower shop in the distance. I'm not going back, Mr. Hayes. Not now, Derek. I just need more time. Derek sighed. How much time? I don't know. Benjamin ran a hand through his hair. Just leave me alone for a few more weeks, please. Derek stared at him for a few seconds, then nodded. Fine. But if things get worse, I'll come and get you by force." "Fair enough." The SUV drove away, leaving Benjamin alone on the corner, his heart racing and the feeling that his world of lies was about to fall apart. Benjamin couldn't sleep that night. Derek's visit had shaken him in a way he didn't expect. It wasn't fear of being found. It was fear of losing what he was building in Austin, that simple life, those conversations with Sophie, and especially those brief moments when Rachel lowered her guard and almost smiled at him. The next morning he was too distracted to notice that Sophie had arrived earlier than usual. She appeared out of nowhere, clapping her hands in front of his face. "Earth to Ben. Are you there, or did you travel to another galaxy?" Benjamin blinked, coming back to reality. "Sorry, I was thinking about making apples with glitter? Not exactly." Sophie climbed onto the wooden bench next to the cart and swung her legs. "You look like someone who argued with somebody. Was it your girlfriend?" "I don't have a girlfriend." "Really?" Sophie's eyes widened. "Why not? You're handsome. You make good apples. And you're not boring. That's already more than most people." Benjamin laughed despite the weight in his chest. "Thanks for the evaluation." "You're welcome." "So why are you sad?" "Who said I'm sad?" "Your eyes." Sophie pointed at him. "My art teacher says eyes are the windows to the soul, and yours have the curtains closed today." Benjamin was impressed. This girl was unbelievably perceptive. "Let's say I'm dealing with some complicated things." "Like what?" "Like hard decisions." Sophie thought for a second. "My mom always says hard decisions are easy when you know what really matters. The problem is figuring out what matters." Benjamin looked at Sophie with a mix of surprise and admiration. "Your mother is very wise." "She is. But don't tell her I said that. Otherwise, she'll get all full of herself and impossible to handle." At that moment, Rachel appeared, carrying a large vase of sunflowers. She stopped when she saw Sophie by the apple cart again. "Sophie, you promised you'd stay helping in the shop today." "I was helping, but then I finished watering the plants and came to give emotional support to Ben." Rachel frowned. "Emotional support? He has soul curtains closed." Rachel looked at Benjamin, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm having a rough day," Benjamin explained, embarrassed. Rachel set the vase on the ground and crossed her arms. "And why is my daughter involved in your rough day?" "Because she showed up offering free life coaching." "Sophie." "What?" "I was just being nice." Sophie jumped off the bench. "You always say we should be nice to people. Being nice doesn't mean getting into other people's lives. Technically, I didn't get into anything. He just looked like he needed help." Rachel rubbed her temples, that universal gesture of a mother at the end of her patience. "Sophie, go back to the shop now." Sophie rolled her eyes but obeyed. Before leaving, she turned to Benjamin. "Remember what I said, figure out what matters." And she ran off before Rachel could scold her again. Rachel stayed there, clearly unsure if she should leave or say something. Benjamin decided to break the silence. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get your daughter involved in my problems. You don't need to apologize. Sophie has a special talent for jumping into places she shouldn't." Rachel hesitated, then asked, "Are you okay?" The question caught Benjamin off guard. It was the first time Rachel had shown genuine concern for him. "I'm dealing with some things from the past. Nothing serious." Rachel studied him for a few seconds, her sharp gaze seeming to look right through the masks. "You know, you don't have to tell your life story to everyone, but you also don't have to carry everything alone." She shrugged. Just some unsolicited advice from someone who learned that the hard way. Benjamin felt his chest tighten. "Thank you." Rachel nodded, picked up the vase of flowers, and started walking away, but then she stopped and turned back. "Ben?" "Yes?" "Sophie is right. You look like someone who could use a friend." She bit her lip as if fighting with herself. "If you want, I don't know, to have a coffee after I close the shop, there's a good cafe on the corner." Benjamin blinked, surprised. "You're inviting me for coffee?" I'm offering adult company, so you stop venting to my 8-year-old. Rachel blushed. But if you don't want to, that's fine. I want to, Benjamin interrupted too quickly. I do. Coffee sounds great. Rachel looked relieved and tried to hide it with a small smile. All right. 6 o'clock at the cafe on the corner. Don't be late. I won't. Rachel gave a brief wave and hurried off, carrying the vase as if it weighed 100 pounds. Benjamin stood there processing what had just happened. Rachel Carter, the woman who had spent weeks treating him with suspicion, had just invited him for coffee. He should be worried. He should be thinking about the risks. He should be protecting himself. But all he could do was smile like a clueless teenager. At exactly 6 o'clock, Benjamin walked into the cafe. It was a small, cozy place, with wooden tables and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. Rachel was already there, sitting at a table by the window, nervously fidgeting with a napkin. She was wearing the same simple jeans and t-shirt, but she had let her hair down, and it fell over her shoulders in soft waves. Benjamin felt his heart beat faster. "Hi," he said, sitting across from her. "Hi." Rachel pushed a cup of coffee toward him. "I ordered an espresso. I hope it's good." "It's perfect. Thank you." They stayed quiet for a few seconds, both unsure how to start. So Rachel finally said, "Sophie made me promise I wouldn't question you about where you came from or why you sell apples on the street." Benjamin laughed. "She made you promise that?" "She did. She said everyone deserves a fresh start and that I need to stop being so suspicious." Rachel took a sip of her coffee. 8 years old, and she already talks like a therapist. She's special. She is. And she's also the reason I don't trust people easily. Rachel looked out the window. When you're a single mom, you learn fast that you have to protect your kid from everything and everyone, because if you don't, no one will. Her father left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for responsibilities. Rachel let out a humorless laugh. Funny how men always know when they're not ready for kids, but never think about that beforehand. Benjamin felt a pang of guilt without even knowing why. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the best thing he ever did. Sophie deserved someone who truly wanted to be there. And I learned it's better to be alone than with someone who's only half present. That's why you don't trust me," Benjamin said, understanding. Rachel looked him straight in the eyes. "It's nothing personal. I just learned to be careful. I get it." Rachel smiled, and this time it was a real smile with no walls. "But Sophie likes you, and she has a very good instinct for people. So maybe I'm wrong about you." Benjamin felt the weight of the lie press against his chest. He wanted to tell the truth. He wanted to say who he really was. But he knew that the moment he did, everything would change. So he only smiled back and said, "Thank you for giving me a chance." And in that moment, drinking coffee with Rachel while the sun set over Austin, Benjamin Hayes felt more real than he had in years. After that afternoon at the cafe, something changed between Benjamin and Rachel. It wasn't anything dramatic or obvious. It was small things. Rachel stopped to talk a little longer. She smiled more easily, and Benjamin found himself waiting anxiously for the moments when she showed up. In the following weeks, Benjamin started helping Rachel with flower deliveries when business was slow at the apple cart. Sophie thought it was hilarious to see an apple seller carrying bouquets around the city. "You look like a giant bear holding daisies," Sophie said, laughing while Benjamin balanced 3 floral arrangements. "Thank you for the encouraging observation," Benjamin answered, trying not to drop anything. Rachel laughed too, and the sound of her laughter made Benjamin forget any embarrassment. On a sunny Thursday, Helen showed up at the flower shop while Benjamin was helping Rachel arrange the vases in the display window. Helen came in with all her usual energy, carrying a shopping bag and a mischievous smile. "News, family," Helen announced, putting the bag on the counter. "Hi, Grandma." Sophie ran to hug her. "Hi, my beautiful girl." Helen kissed her granddaughter's forehead and looked at Benjamin. "And hello, Ben. Are you becoming an official employee here?" "Just helping when I can." Benjamin said, smiling. That's great, because I need to talk to you all about something important. Helen sat in a chair and clapped her hands. Everyone sit down. Rachel frowned. Mom, what happened? Nothing bad, dear. On the contrary. Helen took an envelope from her purse. My 75th birthday is coming 3 weeks from now, to be exact. I know, Mom. We're planning a lovely party for you. I know you are, and I appreciate it, but there's something I want more than a party. Sophie tilted her head. What is it, Grandma? Helen looked directly at Rachel with that determined expression Benjamin already knew. I want to see my daughter happy, married, with someone who truly values her. Rachel widened her eyes. Mom, don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm only expressing the wish of an elderly lady who wants to see her beloved daughter find true love before she leaves this world. You're not leaving any world. You're as healthy as a horse, Rachel protested. But life is short, my daughter, and you've spent the last years hiding behind work and Sophie. It's time for you to live too. Rachel crossed her arms. I am living. You're not. You're surviving. It's different. Helen sighed dramatically. That's why I made a decision. I'm going to start introducing suitors to you. What? Rachel turned pale. Doris's son is single, and George's nephew too. Oh, and there's that nice veterinarian who treated my cat last month. He's divorced but seems like a good man. Mom, you can't do that. Yes, I can and I will, unless you show up with someone at my birthday. Silence fell over the flower shop. Sophie looked from her grandmother to her mother with wide eyes. Rachel looked like she was having a quiet, nervous breakdown, and Benjamin felt his heart racing. Helen stood up, grabbed the bag, and walked to the door. 3 weeks, Rachel. Either you bring someone, or I take control of the romantic operations of your life. And she left, leaving everyone in shock. Rachel covered her face with her hands. She cannot be serious. She is very serious, Sophie said. When Grandma uses that tone, she does what she promises. Remember when she said she was going to learn how to use a computer? Now she has 300 subscribers. Rachel smiled despite herself. This is a nightmare. Benjamin stood there processing everything. Helen wanted Rachel to get married, and she had given an ultimatum 3 weeks. His mind worked at full speed. He couldn't let Rachel be forced to go out with strangers chosen by her mother. Not when he was right there. Before he could think clearly, the words came out. I can help. Rachel took her hands off her face and looked at him. How? Benjamin took a deep breath. Marry me. The silence was overwhelming. Sophie dropped the scissors she was holding. Rachel blinked 3 times as if she thought she had heard wrong. What? Marry me, Benjamin repeated, now more firmly. Fake, of course. Just until your mom's birthday. 3 weeks. Then we break it off, and she stops trying to find you new suitors. Rachel stared at him as if he had grown a second head. Are you out of your mind? Probably. But it makes sense. Your mom wants to see you happy and committed. I show up as your fiancé. We put on a convincing act at her party, and then we go back to our normal lives. No real commitment. No complications. This is a terrible idea on so many levels. I don't even know where to start. Rachel was red. Why? Benjamin crossed his arms. Do you have a better option? Rachel opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I know, but that doesn't mean I'm going to pretend to be engaged to an apple seller I met a few weeks ago. Why not? Your mom already likes me. Sophie approves. And you yourself said I seem like a good person. I said maybe I was wrong about you. That's not the same thing. Sophie, who had been watching everything in silence, finally spoke. I think it's a great idea. Sophie! Rachel turned toward her daughter. What? It's the perfect solution. Grandma is happy. You don't have to go out with that strange veterinarian who smells like wet dog. And Ben helps us. Everybody wins. Nobody wins, Sophie. This is lying. Technically, surprise parties are also lies, Sophie argued. And you've thrown 3 of them for Grandma. Rachel looked up at the ceiling, asking for divine patience. Benjamin took a step forward. "Rachel, look at me." She did, reluctantly. "It's just an act. 3 weeks. I promise I'm not going to make things complicated. Just let me help you this time. You've done so much for me, letting me be here, giving me a chance. Let me give something back." Rachel studied him for long moments. Benjamin could see the inner battle happening in those brown eyes, fear, doubt, but also hope. Finally, she sighed. "You're really serious about this?" "Absolutely." Rachel closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "All right, fine. We'll do it. But there are rules." "Lots of rules." Benjamin smiled, relieved. "As many rules as you want." Sophie celebrated with a loud cheer, jumping around the flower shop, and Benjamin thought he might have just made the best or the worst decision of his life. Probably both. The next morning, Rachel appeared at the apple cart with a notebook, 3 different colored pens, and a serious expression that made Benjamin feel like a student about to take a final exam. "Good morning," he said, trying to sound casual. "Sit," Rachel ordered, pointing to the bench beside the cart. Benjamin sat without arguing. Rachel opened the notebook to a page already covered with neat handwriting. "Rules," she announced. "Several of them, and you're going to agree with all of them, or this fake arrangement ends before it even starts. I'm listening. First rule: no exaggerated displays of affection. We can hold hands, maybe a casual hug, but nothing more than that. Understood? Second rule: you're not sleeping at my house. We need to keep our lives separate. Third rule: Sophie cannot know it's fake." Benjamin frowned. "Why?" "She already knows." "Exactly. And she cannot lie. If my mother asks a direct question, Sophie will fall apart in 3 seconds. Rachel sighed. "We need to convince Sophie it's real, at least until the party is over." Benjamin hadn't thought about that. "Won't that confuse her?" "Probably. But it's better than my mother finding out the truth and having a meltdown." Rachel made another note. "Fourth rule: when this is over, we end things in a friendly way. No drama. Neither one of us gets to be the villain in the story." Agreed. Rachel continued listing rules. They couldn't tell anyone besides Sophie at first. Benjamin needed to learn basic things about her to seem believable. They would have to eat dinner together at least twice a week so Helen could see them. And the most important rule of all: once everything ended, they would go back to being just acquaintances. "Just acquaintances?" Benjamin repeated, feeling something strange in his chest. "Yes. It's cleaner that way. No confusion." Rachel closed the notebook. "Do you agree with everything?" Benjamin should have felt relieved. He should have been happy with the clear, objective rules, but instead he felt a pinch of disappointment. "I agree," he said anyway. "Great." Rachel put the notebook in her bag. "Now come with me. We need to tell Sophie this is real now. The sooner the better. My mom is coming to the flower shop this afternoon, and I need Sophie to be convincing." Benjamin followed Rachel to the flower shop, where Sophie was arranging tulip vases on the counter. The girl looked up as they walked in together, and her eyes lit up. "So, are you really going to do it?" Rachel took a deep breath. "Sophie, sit here. We need to talk." Sophie sat down, swinging her legs, curious. "Ben and I talked about yesterday," Rachel began, "and we decided that maybe this isn't just pretending." Sophie tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "It means we're going to try for real, like actually date." The words came out awkwardly, but Rachel kept her serious face. Sophie's eyes widened. "Really? You're really going to date?" Benjamin placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder, trying to look natural. "Yeah, we realized we already like each other, so why not give it a try?" Sophie stayed quiet for 3 full seconds, then exploded into a huge smile. "I knew it. I knew you two would end up together. Grandma's going to freak out." Rachel forced a smile. "But it's still new, okay? So let's take it slow. No telling everyone yet. Just Grandma." Sophie agreed. She's going to be over the moon, not literally, but like extreme happiness. Benjamin and Rachel exchanged nervous looks. They had just walked into something far more complicated than they expected. That afternoon, Helen showed up at the flower shop, carrying a basket of homemade cookies. Sophie barely let her step inside before shouting, "Grandma, Mom is dating." Helen almost dropped the basket. "What?" "It's true," Rachel said, turning bright red. "She and Ben are dating for real." Helen looked from Rachel to Benjamin, who had just walked in carrying a bag of potting soil, his eyes wide with surprise and emotion. "Is this real, Rachel?" Rachel hesitated, but Benjamin stepped closer and, without thinking too much, took her hand. Her hand was cold and trembling, but she didn't pull away. "It's real, Helen," Benjamin said, his voice steady. "I know it's recent, but Rachel is special, and I would really like to have your blessing to date her." Helen pressed her hands to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. "My blessing? Dear, you have all my blessing." She pulled them both into a tight hug. "I knew it. I knew you two had something special from the very first day." Sophie danced around them, excited. "Grandma, now you don't have to find suitors anymore." "I sure don't. My daughter found one on her own." Helen stepped back, still holding both their hands. "You're coming to my party together, aren't you?" "Of course," Benjamin answered before Rachel could hesitate. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." Helen was glowing. "Wait until I tell the ladies from the knitting club. They'll love it." Rachel's eyes widened. "Mom, you don't need to tell everyone yet." "Nonsense. Good news is meant to be shared." Helen grabbed the cookie basket and handed some to everyone. "Celebrate, children. True love deserves chocolate cookies." Benjamin took a bite, watching Rachel try to smile at her mother while clearly having an internal meltdown. Sophie happily ate her cookie, unaware of anything, and Benjamin thought that maybe they had completely underestimated the size of the mess they were stepping into. After Helen finally left, Rachel dropped into a chair. "What have we done? Technically, you said we needed to convince Sophie." "Mission accomplished." Benjamin sat beside her. "My mom is going to tell everyone the knitting club, her church friends, the manicurist, even the mailman will know by tomorrow. Isn't that good? The more people know, the more convincing it is." Rachel looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "And when we break up 3 weeks from now, what are we going to tell everyone?" Benjamin hadn't thought of that. "We'll come up with something. Irreconcilable differences. We want different things in life. People break up all the time, but my mom will be devastated. Then we stretch it a bit, another month, 2. However long it takes for your mom not to suspect anything." Rachel covered her face with her hands. "This is getting completely out of control." Sophie appeared with 3 cups of orange juice. "You two look tense for a couple in love." Rachel quickly dropped her hands. "We're not tense." "Yes, you are. My teacher says couples in love smile like fools all the time. You two look like you just got an overdue electric bill." Benjamin let out a nervous laugh. "It's just all very new, Sophie. Then you need to practice." Sophie set the cups on the table. Look into each other's eyes without looking scared." Rachel and Benjamin looked at each other, and yes, they looked scared. "See? Terrible." Sophie crossed her arms. "If you're going to fool Grandma, you need to do better than that." Rachel blinked. "Fool Grandma? I thought you believed this was real." Sophie rolled her eyes. "Mom, I'm 8 years old. I'm not silly. I know you're pretending. But Grandma doesn't know. So you two need to sell this story better." Benjamin and Rachel were speechless. "You knew?" Rachel stammered. "Of course. You both turned too red when you said it. People in love act goofy, not panicked." Sophie shrugged. "But it's fine. I think it's fun. It's like a live soap opera." Rachel looked at Benjamin, who looked back with the same shocked expression. And then the two of them burst out laughing, a nervous, hysterical laugh from people who had just realized they were being manipulated by an 8-year-old. Sophie smiled, satisfied, and drank her juice calmly. In the following days, Benjamin and Rachel had to get used to the new reality. Everyone in Austin seemed to know they were dating. Helen had kept her promise and spread the news like wildfire. The cafe owner started giving discounts to the cutest couple in town. The hot dog vendor waved at Benjamin with a knowing smile. Even the woman who sold crafts in the square gave Rachel a heart-shaped keychain, saying, "For your sweetheart." "This is getting completely out of control," Rachel murmured, as the two of them had dinner in a small downtown restaurant. It was their third official date, and Helen had insisted so much they had no choice. "At least the food is good," Benjamin said, trying to see the bright side. "The food isn't the problem. The problem is that in 3 weeks I'll have to explain to half the city why we broke up or we don't break up." Rachel stopped with her fork in the air. "What do you mean?" Benjamin shrugged, trying to sound casual. "Maybe we can keep being friends. Go out sometimes. No pressure." Rachel narrowed her eyes. "Ben, we agreed 3 weeks. My mom's party. Then everything goes back to normal." "I know. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be so final." Rachel studied him for a few seconds, then went back to eating without answering. Benjamin didn't insist, but that tight feeling in his chest returned. The next day, Sophie decided they needed intensive couple training. "You two are terrible at looking like you're in love," she declared, hands on her hips in the backyard behind the flower shop. "When you look at each other, it's like you're mentally calculating taxes." Rachel crossed her arms. "Sophie, we're doing the best we can. Your best isn't good enough." Sophie pulled up a chair. "Sit facing each other." Benjamin and Rachel obeyed, feeling ridiculous. "Now hold hands," Sophie ordered. Rachel frowned. "What?" "Hold hands like in the movies. It's romantic." Benjamin slowly extended his hand. Rachel looked at it as if it were a trap, but finally placed hers on top. Her hand was small, calloused from working with flowers, and surprisingly warm. "Now look at each other," Sophie instructed, without looking scared. They tried. They really tried. But after 5 seconds, both of them started laughing. "See that?" Sophie clapped. "Laughing together. That's a couple thing." "Sophie, this is ridiculous," Rachel said, still laughing. "It's ridiculous, but it's working. You look human now, not like robots programmed to fake emotions." Benjamin had to admit Sophie had a point. The training continued for the next days. Sophie made them practice walking while holding hands without looking uncomfortable. She taught Benjamin how to give compliments that sounded genuine, and she scolded Rachel every time she switched back to suspicious mode. "Mom, you can't look at Ben like he's going to steal the cash register. He's your boyfriend, remember?" "Fake boyfriend," Rachel corrected. "But Grandma doesn't know that. So stop frowning every time he gets close." Slowly, something started to change. Benjamin couldn't say exactly when, but it became easier. Holding Rachel's hand didn't feel strange anymore. Making her laugh became his favorite pastime, and when she smiled, really smiled, Benjamin felt as if he had won an award. A week before Helen's party, Benjamin was helping Rachel close the flower shop when she finally asked, "Why did you really propose this?" Benjamin stopped stacking pots. "What? The fake marriage? The dating, all of it?" Rachel leaned on the counter. "You could have stayed quiet. Let my mom drag me to horrible dates." "Why did you offer?" Benjamin hesitated. The real answer was complicated and revealed more than he was ready to admit. "Because you deserved someone by your side, even if it was only pretend." Rachel stayed silent, her eyes searching his as if trying to find the hidden lie. "You're strange, Ben Miller. I know. And I still think you're hiding something." "I know you do." Rachel sighed. "But for some ridiculous reason, I trust you. Not completely, but a little." Benjamin felt his heart speed up. "That's progress." "It is." Rachel grabbed her bag. "Tomorrow we're having dinner at my mother's house. She wants to get to know you better. I hope you're ready for 20 questions about your entire life." Benjamin swallowed hard. 20 questions were 19 more than he could answer honestly. I'll survive. Rachel gave him a sideways smile, the kind that made his stomach flip. We'll see. She left the flower shop, and Benjamin stayed there alone in the dark, wondering when exactly he'd stopped pretending. Because the truth, the frightening truth he didn't want to admit even to himself, was that Rachel Carter was no longer part of an act. She had become real. Very real. And when everything fell apart, when the truth about who he really was came out, Benjamin knew he would lose much more than a fake relationship. He would lose the one person who had made him feel human again. He locked up the flower shop, walked through the quiet streets of Austin back to his tiny apartment, and for the first time since he'd run from Seattle, Benjamin Hayes felt real fear, not fear of being discovered, but fear of hurting someone who truly mattered. The next day, Benjamin was more nervous than he had ever been in any business meeting. He had faced billionaire investors and negotiated million-dollar contracts, but the idea of having dinner at Helen's house made his hands sweat. Rachel met him at her mother's door at 6:30 sharp. "Ready?" she asked, giving him a small, nervous smile. "No," Benjamin admitted. "But let's go anyway." Helen's house was cozy, with a garden full of flowers and a porch decorated with rocking chairs. As soon as they walked in, the smell of home-cooked food hit Benjamin, making his stomach growl. "You're here!" Helen appeared from the kitchen wearing a floral apron and holding a wooden spoon. "Ben, dear, come in. Make yourself at home." Sophie ran over to hug Benjamin. "Did you survive the day?" "My mom was super nervous. She changed outfits 4 times. Sophie," Rachel turned bright red. "It's true. And she put on perfume 3 times. The whole house smells like lavender now." Benjamin held back a laugh, while Rachel covered her face with her hands, mortified. Helen pulled Benjamin toward the kitchen. "Come here. I need your opinion on the seasoning of the sauce." Benjamin tasted the sauce, and his eyes widened. "This is amazing, Helen. Family recipe." Helen lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Now tell me, what are your intentions with my daughter?" Benjamin nearly choked. "My intentions?" "Yes. Are you serious, or are you just playing around? Because Rachel has already suffered enough, and I'm not letting anyone hurt her again." Benjamin felt the weight of those words. Helen wasn't joking. Her eyes, usually cheerful and mischievous, were serious. "I'm serious, Helen. Rachel is special. I wouldn't hurt her on purpose." Helen studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you. I don't know why, but I do." She went back to stirring the pot. "Just don't make me regret it." During dinner, Helen bombarded Benjamin with questions. Where was he from? What did his family do? Why did he sell apples? Did he have plans for the future? Benjamin dodged with half-truths. Born in Washington State, complicated family preferred not to talk about it, sold apples because he wanted a simpler life. And about the future? Well, he was trying to figure it out one day at a time. Sophie watched everything with that sharp look that missed nothing. "You talk a lot without saying anything," she said, chewing mashed potatoes. "Like a politician in a debate." "Sophie." Rachel and Helen scolded at the same time. "What?" "It's true." He answered 3 questions without actually answering anything. Benjamin couldn't hold back a laugh. "You're dangerously observant for an 8-year-old. 8.5, Sophie corrected. "And thank you. I'm going to be a detective when I grow up. Or an astronaut. I haven't decided yet." After dinner, while Helen and Rachel washed the dishes in the kitchen, Sophie pulled Benjamin out to the porch. "I need to show you something," she said. Way too serious. "What is it?" Sophie looked around to make sure they were alone, then pulled a phone from her pocket. "I saw a strange car on your street yesterday, a black SUV. It looked kind of suspicious." Benjamin's heart stopped. "How do you know where I live?" "I followed you once." Sophie shrugged, completely unbothered. "Just to make sure you weren't a serial killer or something. My mom needs protection." Benjamin didn't know whether to be impressed or worried. "Sophie, you can't go around following people." I know, but it's not about that." Sophie showed a slightly blurry photo on her phone. This car was parked in front of your building, and there was a woman inside. She was taking pictures of you. Benjamin felt his blood run cold. Victoria. It had to be Victoria. When was this? Yesterday afternoon, around 4. Sophie put the phone away. Do you know her? Benjamin hesitated. He couldn't lie to Sophie. She was far too smart. Maybe. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated, Ben. Sophie crossed her arms. Look, I don't know what you're hiding, but if it's something that's going to hurt my mom, you need to tell her now. Sophie, I'm serious. My mom has been hurt before by my dad. He promised he would stay, but he left. Sophie looked at her own hands. She pretended she was fine, but I heard her crying in her room at night for months. If you leave too, it will destroy her. Benjamin felt like he had been punched in the stomach. I'm not going anywhere, Sophie. Do you promise? Benjamin wanted to promise. He wanted to say he would stay forever, but he couldn't make a promise he might not be able to keep. I will do everything I can to stay. That I can promise. Sophie stared at him, evaluating the honesty in his words. Then she nodded slowly. All right, but if that woman shows up again, I'm telling my mom with or without your permission. Fair enough. At that moment, Rachel appeared on the porch. What are you two plotting? Nothing, Benjamin and Sophie said at the same time, a little too fast. Rachel narrowed her eyes. Right. I don't believe either of you. She looked at Benjamin. It's time for us to go. I wake up early tomorrow. Benjamin said goodbye to Helen, who hugged him tightly and whispered, Take care of my girl. I will, Benjamin promised. And this time, it was a real promise. On the way out, while they walked down the quiet street, Rachel asked, What was Sophie really talking to you about? Benjamin thought about telling her about Victoria, about the SUV, about everything, but not there, not in that moment. She was giving me tips on how to win you over for real. Rachel rolled her eyes but smiled. And what did she say? That I need to bring flowers and chocolate and never, ever forget birthdays. Rachel laughed at sound Benjamin had learned to love. Sophie watches too many soap operas. Maybe, but she's not wrong. Rachel stopped walking and looked at him. Ben, you know this is still temporary, right? You can't get confused about what we're doing here. Benjamin looked into her eyes and saw fear, not fear that he was lying, but fear that he was telling the truth. I know exactly what we're doing, Rachel. And in that moment, under the street light on the empty road, Benjamin realized that maybe both of them had been lying to themselves for weeks. Because whatever this was, it had stopped being pretend a long time ago. The next morning, Benjamin woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. There were only 3 days left until Helen's party, and he knew Victoria was nearby, waiting for the right moment to strike. He needed to do something, but he didn't know what. When he arrived at the apple cart, Sophie was already there, sitting on the curb with a lollipop in her mouth and a serious expression. We need to talk, she said bluntly. Good morning to you, too. There's nothing good about it. That woman from the car came back last night. I saw her from my bedroom window. Sophie took the lollipop out of her mouth. Ben. Who is she? Benjamin sighed and sat beside her. She's someone from my past. Someone I wish I'd never see again. Ex-girlfriend? Ex-fiancé. Sophie's eyes widened. You were engaged, and you didn't tell my mom? It's complicated, Sophie. Everything is complicated with you. Sophie stood up, frustrated. You need to tell the truth now, before Grandma's party. I'm going to tell her. I promise. I just need the right moment. Sophie stared at him with that look that seemed much older than 8 years. The right moment doesn't exist, Ben. There's only the moment you choose. And the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Before Benjamin could respond, Rachel came running down the sidewalk, her face pale with worry. Sophie, you left without telling me again. Sorry, Mom. I only came to tell Ben about the party. Rachel took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Then she looked at Benjamin. The party is tomorrow night. My mom is in full hurricane mode. organizing everything. She wants us to get there early to help decorate. Of course, I'll be there." Rachel hesitated, then stepped closer. "Ben, are you sure you want to do this? There's still time to back out. I can make up an excuse for my mom." Benjamin held her hand, and this time it wasn't for show. "I want to be there, Rachel. With you. For real." Rachel was speechless. Sophie watched the two of them with a mischievous smile. "Look at that. You're getting better at acting." Rachel rolled her eyes but didn't let go of Benjamin's hand. The next day, Helen's house was completely transformed, balloons everywhere, tables decorated with flowers, and a huge banner that read Helen Carter's 75 years, a life of love. Benjamin arrived early, just as he had promised, and Helen immediately put him to work hanging decorations. "More to the left." "No. Now it's crooked. A little to the right." Helen directed from below with the authority of a general. "Mom, you're going to wear Ben out before the party even starts," Rachel said, carrying a tray of snacks. "Nonsense. He's strong. Look at those arms." Helen winked. "You chose well, dear." Rachel turned red all the way to her hairline. Sophie walked in carrying a box of napkins. "Grandma, do you want the pink napkins or the gold ones?" "Both mixed. A party should be cheerful, not monochromatic." In the hours that followed, the house filled with guests, friends from the knitting club, neighbors, distant relatives. Everyone wanted to meet Rachel's boyfriend. Benjamin shook more hands that afternoon than in months of business networking, and every person he met made a point of saying how much Rachel deserved to be happy. "She's been through a lot," said an elderly woman with white hair. "That father of Sophie's was a coward. But you seem different, young man. You seem like a real person." Benjamin smiled, but her words stung. A real person. If only she knew how many lies he was carrying. When the party was at its peak, Helen climbed onto a chair and asked for attention. "My dear friends, thank you for being here, celebrating with me. 75 years is a lot, but I'm happier now than at any other moment in my life." Applause filled the room. And do you know why? Helen looked directly at Rachel and Benjamin. "Because I'm finally going to see my beloved daughter marry someone who truly values her." Rachel almost dropped her glass. "Mom, that's why I want to make an official request." Helen pressed her hands together like she was praying. "Ben, dear, would you ask my daughter to marry you? Here, now, in front of everyone." Silence fell over the room. Benjamin felt all the color drain from his face. Rachel was frozen. Sophie's eyes were huge. Helen, I know it's fast, but life is short, and when you find the right person, you just know." Helen climbed down from the chair and pushed Benjamin toward Rachel. "Go on, son. Make my granddaughter happy." The guests started clapping and chanting, "Ask her, ask her, ask her." Benjamin looked at Rachel, who seemed to be having a silent panic attack. He looked at Sophie, who waved her hands desperately as if saying, "Do something." And so Benjamin did the only thing he could think of. He knelt down. The room grew even louder. Rachel covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes filled with something between fear and surprise. "Rachel Carter," Benjamin said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I know we haven't known each other long, but in this time you've shown me what it's like to be truly seen, not for what I have, but for who I am." Rachel shook her head lightly as if saying, "Don't do this." But Benjamin continued, "You've made me want to be a better person. You and Sophie gave me something I thought I had lost forever." He took a breath. "So, even without a ring, even without anything planned, I need to ask, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Rachel's face. The entire room was silent, waiting. And then, to Benjamin's shock, to everyone's shock, Rachel said, "Yes." The room exploded in applause and cheers. Helen cried with joy. Sophie jumped up and down, and Benjamin, still kneeling, stared at Rachel completely lost. She leaned down to his level and whispered in his ear, "I'm going to kill you later." But when she pulled him into a hug and everyone applauded even louder, Benjamin felt something he didn't expect. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all pretend after all. The party went on for another 2 hours, but Benjamin could barely process anything. Rachel held his hand too tightly, smiling at the guests as she accepted congratulations. Yet he could feel the tension in every part of her. When they finally found a moment alone in the kitchen, Rachel turned to him, eyes wide. "What just happened?" "Your mom cornered us. I didn't know what else to do." "So, you proposed in front of 50 people. Rachel ran her hands over her face. "Ben, this got completely out of control." "I know, but you said yes." "Why did you say yes?" Rachel was speechless for a moment. Because my mom was looking at me with those hopeful eyes. And everyone was watching. And I panicked." "We both panicked," Benjamin admitted. "And now, what are we going to do?" Rachel leaned against the counter. "My mom is going to want to set a date, choose a dress, invite half of Texas." Before Benjamin could answer, Sophie walked into the kitchen holding a slice of cake. "Are you two aware that there's a woman outside with a professional camera taking pictures of the party?" Benjamin's blood ran cold. "What?" "Yeah. Blonde, high heels, a face like she just sucked a lemon. She's standing on the sidewalk across the street." Sophie took a bite of the cake. "I bet it's the woman from the SUV." Benjamin rushed to the window and looked through the curtain. There was Victoria with a huge camera photographing the house. "Who is that?" Rachel asked, coming to the window. Benjamin closed his eyes. It was over. Everything was about to fall apart. "That's Victoria, my ex-fiancée." Rachel stepped back. "You're what?" "I can explain. You have an ex-fiancée stalking you, and you didn't think it was relevant to mention?" Rachel's voice was rising. "Rachel, please." "No, don't please me." Rachel grabbed her purse. "Sophie, we're going home now." "But Mom." "Now, Sophie." Benjamin tried to follow, but Rachel raised her hand to stop him. "No. You've owed me an explanation since the day you showed up in this town, and I was stupid enough to trust you." Tears were running down her face. "I said yes to your proposal, Ben, in front of my whole family. And now I find out you have a stalker ex-fiancé I didn't even know existed." "Rachel, let me explain everything, please." But Rachel was already walking out the back door with Sophie. Helen came into the kitchen, confused. "What happened? Why is Rachel leaving?" Benjamin couldn't answer. He just watched Rachel and Sophie disappear into the night, taking with them any chance he had of fixing this. The next morning, Benjamin knocked on Rachel's door for 20 minutes before Sophie finally opened it. "She doesn't want to talk to you," Sophie said, but still let him in. "Where is she?" "In her room, crying again." Sophie crossed her arms. "You promised you wouldn't hurt her, Ben." "I know, and I'm going to fix this. I promise." Benjamin went upstairs and knocked on Rachel's bedroom door. "Go away, Ben. I'm not leaving. Not until you hear me." Silence. "Rachel, please let me tell you the truth. All of it." The door opened slowly. Rachel was wearing a hoodie, her eyes red, her hair messy, and even like that, she was the most beautiful thing Benjamin had ever seen. "You have 5 minutes," she said coldly. Benjamin took a deep breath and began. He told her everything about being Benjamin Hayes, not Ben Miller, about the tech company, about the $3 billion, about Victoria discovering the affair and planning to steal half his fortune, about running away to Austin and becoming an apple vendor because he was tired of being loved only for his money. When he finished, Rachel was sitting on the bed, processing everything in silence. "So you're a billionaire?" she finally said. "Yes. And you lied about who you were from the very first day." "Yes. And you let me fall in love with someone who doesn't exist." Benjamin felt his heart break. "Rachel, Ben exists. He always existed. I just forgot how to be him until I met you." Rachel shook her head, tears falling. "I don't know what's real and what's a lie, Ben. Or Benjamin. or whoever you are. What I feel for you is real." Benjamin knelt in front of her. "Everything that happened between us was real, the conversations, the laughs, the moments. I fell in love with you, Rachel, truly. And I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of losing you. And you lied anyway. And I lied anyway." Benjamin took her hands. "And I'm sorry more than you can imagine, but I love you, Rachel. And I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance to prove it." Rachel pulled her hands away. Benjamin felt the world collapse. "I need time," she said, her voice breaking. "I need to think, to process all of this." "How much time do you need?" "I don't know, days, weeks. Just please go. Let me breathe." Benjamin nodded, defeated, and stood up. When he was almost out the door, Rachel called, "Ben." He turned, hopeful. "That proposal, was it real?" Benjamin looked into her eyes and spoke the truest words of his life. Every word. Rachel didn't answer. She just closed the door quietly, leaving Benjamin alone in the hallway. When he went downstairs, Sophie was waiting. "She's going to forgive you," the girl said. "It will take a while, but she will. Because even though you lied about everything, the important part was true." "And what part is that?" Sophie smiled. "That you love her. Anyone can see that, even my mom, once she stops being angry." Benjamin hugged Sophie silently, grateful that at least one person was on his side. But when he left that house, he didn't know if Rachel would ever forgive him. And for the first time since running away from Seattle, Benjamin Hayes didn't have a plan. He only had hope. And hope, he was learning, was sometimes all that was left. 3 days passed, 3 days that felt like 3 years for Benjamin. He didn't go back to the apple cart. He didn't leave the apartment. He only waited, staring at the phone, hoping Rachel would call. She didn't call. On the 4th day, Sophie showed up at his apartment door with a backpack and a determined expression. "How did you find me?" Benjamin asked, surprised. "I'm a detective, remember?" Sophie walked in without an invitation. "You look terrible. Thanks for the honesty." "You're welcome." Sophie dropped the backpack on the couch. "My mom looks terrible too. She cries when she thinks I'm not watching. And Grandma Helen is losing her mind because she thinks you two fought because she pushed the marriage proposal." Benjamin ran a hand through his messy hair. "I ruined everything, Sophie." "Yeah, you did." Sophie sat on the kitchen table. "But you can still fix it." "How?" "Your mom barely wants to talk to me." "That's why I brought this." Sophie pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "You're going to record a video telling everything, the whole truth. No lies, no masks, and I'm going to show it to her." Benjamin looked at the flash drive as if it were a bomb. "You think this will work?" "I don't know. But it's better than sitting here like a wilted plant." Sophie pushed the flash drive into his hand. "Speak from the heart, Ben or Benjamin, or whoever you are. Just be real this time." That same afternoon, Benjamin recorded the video. He talked about his life in Seattle, about the loneliness of being loved only for money, about discovering Victoria's betrayal. He talked about running away to Austin and meeting an impossible girl with braids who changed everything, about a cautious florist who made him want to be a better man. And he talked about love, the real love he had for Rachel and Sophie, the love that made him realize no fortune in the world was worth more than the simple moments with them. When he finished, Benjamin had tears on his face. Sophie took the flash drive and hugged him tight. "She's going to watch it. I promise." 2 days later, Sophie kept her promise. She found Rachel at the flower shop, set the laptop in front of her, and pressed play. Rachel tried to resist, but after the first 30 seconds she couldn't stop watching. She saw Benjamin vulnerable, honest, completely exposed. She saw his tears. She heard every word filled with regret and love. And when the video ended, Rachel was crying too. "He really loves you, Mom," Sophie said, holding her hand. "I know he lied, and I know you're scared, but he loves you, and you love him too. I can see it in your eyes every time you talk about him." Rachel covered her face with her hands. "I don't know if I can trust him again, Sophie." Then don't trust him. Trust what you feel. Sophie pulled her mother's hands down. You always taught me that everyone deserves a second chance. Why doesn't Ben deserve one too? Rachel looked at her daughter and saw wisdom far beyond 8 years. When did you get so smart? I always was. You just took a while to notice. Sophie smiled. So what are you going to do? Rachel took a deep breath. I'm going to do something completely crazy. That same night, Rachel knocked on Benjamin's apartment door. He opened it, surprised, wearing wrinkled clothes and with an unshaven face. Rachel, I watched the video, she said plainly, and I'm still angry at you. Rachel crossed her arms. You lied to me for weeks, made me fall in love with someone I thought didn't exist. I know. And I'm sorry. Let me finish. Rachel raised her hand. You lied about a lot of things, but there was one thing you didn't lie about. I saw it in your eyes, Ben or Benjamin. The name doesn't matter. The man I met, the man who made terrible apples and talked to my daughter and made me laugh, that man was real, and that's the man I love. Benjamin felt his heart race. Rachel. So here's the deal. Rachel stepped closer. No lies ever again. If we're going to try this for real, it has to be with total honesty about everything. I promise. Never again. And you're going to talk to my mom again as Benjamin Hayes, not as Ben Miller. And you're going to explain everything to her too. I'll do that. And you're still going to have to win me over again from zero, because trust isn't rebuilt in a day. Benjamin smiled for the first time in days. I'll spend the rest of my life winning you over if I have to. Rachel finally smiled too. So dramatic. She laughed. And Benjamin felt as if the sun had come out again. Rachel stepped a little closer. So that marriage proposal. It was real, Benjamin said, cutting her off. Every word. But I understand if you want to forget it happened. We can start over. Do everything right this time. Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Or we can keep the proposal and have a real wedding when we're ready. No rush, no pressure. Benjamin couldn't help it. He pulled Rachel into a tight hug. I love you so much. I love you too, you billionaire disguised as an apple vendor. They stayed like that for a few minutes, just holding each other, letting the world shrink down to the two of them. Then Rachel stepped back slightly. But there's still one problem, Victoria. She won't just give up. I know. I've already talked to my lawyer. We'll deal with her legally and the right way. And the press, when they find out the missing billionaire is in Austin? Benjamin shrugged. Let them find out. I'm not hiding anymore, not from who I am, not from you. Rachel smiled and held his hand. Then we'll face all of it together. Together. 3 months later, Helen's backyard was completely transformed, flowers everywhere, lights hanging from the trees, white chairs arranged in neat rows, and at the center of it all an arch decorated with sunflowers and caramel apples. Sophie, wearing a light yellow dress and a flower crown, stood by the door, waiting for Rachel to finish getting ready. Mom, everyone's waiting. Rachel appeared wearing a simple white lace dress, her hair loose, no heavy makeup. She looked beautiful in the most natural way. How do I look? Perfect. Sophie held her mother's hand. Ready to marry a billionaire? Rachel laughed. Ready to marry Ben. The rest doesn't matter. The music began. Sophie walked out first, tossing flower petals. Then Rachel followed, walking beside Helen, who couldn't stop crying from happiness. Benjamin stood at the altar in a simple suit, hair trimmed, beard clean, and when he saw Rachel walking toward him, he knew he had made every right decision that had brought him to that moment. The ceremony was small and intimate, just close family and friends. Helen cried the entire time. Sophie performed her role as maid of honor perfectly, and when it was time for the vows, Benjamin and Rachel read their own. Rachel, Benjamin began, holding her hands, you taught me that wealth has nothing to do with money. It's waking up next to someone you love. It's laughing together at breakfast. It's an 8-year-old who keeps you in line when needed. Everyone laughed, including Sophie. I promise, to be honest, to be present, To be the man you and Sophie deserve, not the billionaire, not the apple vendor, just me, always. Rachel was crying when it was her turn. Ben, you came into my life selling terrible apples and hiding secrets. More laughter. But behind all the lies there was a good man trying to find himself. And somehow, while you found yourself, I found myself too. You reminded me that it's okay to trust again. It's okay to fall in love again, and it's okay to let someone in even when it's scary. I promise to be patient, to be real, and to share every caramel apple with you for the rest of our lives. When they were finally declared husband and wife, Benjamin pulled Rachel into a kiss that earned loud applause from everyone present. Sophie shouted, "Finally! I thought you two would never kiss for real." The party went on through the evening with music, food, and plenty of caramel apples. Helen danced with Benjamin and whispered, "You made my daughter happy. That's all a mother can ask for." Derek, Benjamin's assistant, was there too. He approached at the end of the night. "Mr. Hayes, the company is doing well, but they miss you." Benjamin looked at Rachel dancing with Sophie, both laughing. "Tell them I'm exactly where I need to be." When the party ended and the guests left, Benjamin, Rachel, and Sophie stayed alone in the backyard, sitting among the flowers and lights. "So," Sophie said, eating the last caramel apple, "what's the next step? Honeymoon in Paris? Huge mansion? Life of rich and famous?" Benjamin and Rachel looked at each other and smiled. "Actually," Rachel said, "we were thinking of staying right here in Austin at the flower shop, living a simple life." "Really?" Sophie's eyes widened. "Really?" Benjamin pulled both of them close to him. "Because I discovered that fairy tales don't need castles. They only need true love. And I've already found mine." Rachel rested her head on his shoulder. "Who would have thought everything would start with a suspicious apple seller? And a cautious florist," Benjamin added. "And a very smart girl who noticed everything," Sophie added, smiling. The three of them stayed there under the stars, surrounded by flowers and the sweet smell of caramel apples. And Benjamin realized he had spent years looking for meaning in the wrong places. True wealth had always been in the simple things: a hand to hold, a laugh to share, and a love to last a lifetime. Sometimes you need to lose everything to caramel apple and an open heart to begin the most beautiful story of all.